Once again, welcome. My name is Luisa Maria Castillo, and our topic for tonight's webinar is Mapping Dreams, the Transition to Post-Secondary Education and/or Training. And this is actually the second section of our Mapping Dreams series. This event is part of our Connections California Transition to Adulthood program, which is a project of Parents Helping Parents. And it's actually a webinar created by Pacers National Parent Center on Transition to Employment. And before we start, I'm just going to give you a quick overview of Connections California. It is a central network of information that is completely online and available in English and Spanish, focused on adult planning for people with disabilities. We understand how overwhelming and complex it can be when you are transitioning to adulthood, for people with disabilities of any kind, for both for themselves, for their families, and for their allies. So we really invite you to browse our site to learn more about the various topics related to adulthood. And now we're going to be letting Corinne go on and go over with the takeaways for today.
Thank you, Luisa. So what are the takeaways for today? So in this presentation, we'll explore what families and youth can do to help plan for the students' transition from high school to adult employment, post-secondary education or training, and independent living. So we've divided this presentation into 3 sections, as Luisa mentioned, and today we'll be focusing on transition to post-secondary education and or training. So one of the tools that you can use in paving the way to a successful future is the transition process. So on top of that, we will also discuss providing or provide suggestions for you and your family to use at home and in the community to make this transition as fruitful and successful as possible. So the transition your child will make from being a child to becoming an adult member of the community is an important journey and one that requires a plan. It's important to begin thinking about your child's transition to adult life as early as possible. And your child will need to make many significant decisions during this journey to adult life. And by using this presentation as a starting point, you can help your youth make those decisions and plan for life after high school. So next slide. So what are the factors linked to post-high school success? So the National Longitudinal Transition Study cites 7 characteristics that are linked to post-high school success for youth. As I read this list, think about how you as a parent or perhaps the student can get involved in these areas and have a lot of influence in what takes place. So performing the acts of daily living well is one of those 7 characteristics for a successful transition. Getting together with friends weekly, becoming social, having a social network, participating in a school sport or a club, avoiding suspension, staying on track, taking a college entrance or placement exam. You as a parent might have to get your child organized and find what testing is available in your area. Having recent paid work experience, and then also having the parent expect that the student will live independently and that they will be able to advocate for themselves. So as you can see, a youth transition to adulthood does involve the parents, and you play an important role. So as we say in quotes, parents are forever. There will be many people that come in and out of your child's life, but you as the parent are forever. And why are parents and families so important? It's because you have the history, you know the background of your child. And as they go forward into adulthood, you've been there all along the way. Parenting started from day one, and you've moved through the individualized education program with your child. You know what's worked in the past and what hasn't worked. And you know about your child's whole life, not just a portion of it. So you, as somebody who's been involved from day one, have the big picture of what your child is all about. So parents are the keeper of high expectations as well, and they build upon the person's strengths their interests and needs, so parents can support and guide their children to make informed choices and decisions. And your involvement on the IEP team may formally end when rights are transferred to the student at the legal age of majority, which in California is 18, but parents often become a transition expert or a case manager. So once a student graduates, you will still be involved in the transition process, and you as a parent can help your student or child understand the options, and you can also gain needed skills to help them along the way. So while they're transitioning, students will begin to take on more responsibility, and the parents will find new ways to provide support. So it's important to remember that while the parental roles will change, a young person, when they graduate from high school and they reach age of adulthood, you're still the parent, and you can still participate and support your child. A student's maturity, their cultural values, and their other individual characteristics will probably determine what type of involvement the family and the parent will have, and what type of support will be appropriate and helpful for each individual student. So this slide speaks to the power of parent involvement and high expectations. So does it really matter at this stage in the game when your child is transitioning to adulthood, how much involvement you have? And the answer is yes. Research has shown that family involvement is a greater predictor of successful outcomes for youth, more than income or social status. So in addition, students with one or more parents who participated in IEP meetings during the 11th and 12th grade were more likely to be engaged in post-school employment. And on top of that, students with parents who had high expectations were more likely to be engaged in post-secondary education and employment. When families remain involved in their children's middle school and high school education, students are more likely to attend school. They're more likely to have a positive attitude about school, earn higher grades. They can score higher on standardized tests, and graduate from high school and enroll in post-secondary programs. So these successes matter in the long run, and your support and your expectations matter. So experts on human development consider this late adolescence a launching period. And when parents help youth develop skills they will need as adults, you play an important role, as I mentioned. So those roles may change when a young person graduates from high school and reaches the age of adulthood, but they don't end. So stay involved. Parent membership in the transition planning is required and essential, and parents can provide a foundation for keeping the transition process grounded and focused on their child's individual strengths, needs, and preferences. Parents know their child's post-secondary education or training and career ambitions and the possible supports they might need along the way. And the parents may be able to identify family or community members who can provide additional support. So for example, if your child is interested in animals or being a veterinarian or a vet tech, perhaps you could reach out to the local veterinarian and ask if your child could shadow them one day, or talk to them about what their job is like, or give them some suggestions on how to become involved or get an internship. Reaching out to the community, and members might be willing to help and provide additional information and support to your child.
Thank you, Corinne. That's great. And as we learned earlier, parental expectations are a key factor in a young adult's post-school success. The higher the expectation, is that people with disabilities will have equal opportunities for full participation in society. And here in the US, having high expectations for individuals with disabilities is not just an idea, or it's not just wishful thinking. It's actually embedded in the civil rights law. And the Rehabilitation Act findings state that disability is a natural part of the human experience and in no way diminishes the right of individuals to live independently, enjoy self-determination, make choices, contribute to society, pursue meaningful careers, and enjoy full inclusion and integration in the economic, political, social, cultural, and educational mainstream of American society. So as your student begins transitioning towards life after high school, legislation such as Section 504 and the Americans with Disability Act, known as ADA, related to employment, post-secondary education, and community living will take on greater significance. And we're going to be talking more about that as we move forward. But what can parents do now? Federal law supports early transition planning for children with disabilities beginning no later than age of 16. And the IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, requires that all children with disabilities have available for them FAPE, which is a free, appropriate public education that will provide them with special education and related services. And these services are designed to meet their unique needs and prepare them for employment, post-secondary education and training, and when appropriate, with independent living. And this may include community participation, recreation, leisure, and living at home. Something important to also keep in mind is that parents also transition. They need to learn additional skills when their child enters the adult world after high school, and parents may need training on topics such as disability loss, fostering self-determination, decision-making skills, or adult service systems. And learning how to ask the right questions to the right people is also a key skill. Parents will often become investigators, of what might be available far enough in advance in order to make those decisions soon enough to prevent any gaps along the way. And IEP team involvement may formally end when rights are transferred to the student. However, parents frequently become that transition expert or that case manager, once the student graduates. So involvement in the school transition process will really help parents understand options and will help you guys gain those necessary skills. Students will also begin to take on more responsibility, and parents will find new ways to provide that support they need. These parental roles change when a young person graduates from high school and reaches the age of adulthood, but they do not end. So a few tips to consider, everything will take as long as it's supposed to. So always plan ahead for that. And there's also going to be a lot of trial and error. So that's why it's important to start early. And having plan A and plan B, even plan C will be helpful. So always plan ahead. Now, while parents are important, we need to understand and, have clear that the student is at the center of the transition planning. And as a teen moves towards adulthood, the family and the IEP team will support the student as they look more closely at big questions, important questions. For example, will I go to college or another type of school to receive training after I graduate? What kind of work do I want to do? Or where will I go to learn the skills to do that work? Where and how do I want to live? What will I want to do for fun? Where will I belong? Who will I hang out with? Or how do I get to places? And in order to receive these desired outcomes or results, then the student may also ask, what skills do I need to learn? What support will I need to have? Or who can help me get to where I want to go? So now it's time to start mapping dreams for the future. And we're going to be taking a look at some ways to do that at school and at home. How can we get from here to there? So think of your child's current skill and experience level as the here, and their hopes for future education or training as the there. Families of children with disabilities, we know you want to help your children achieve their own dreams, and this requires early planning and active involvement of your child as much as possible in the process. And as families, your involvement in the transition process includes you becoming aware of options, inviting new people into your child's life, staying flexible, asking questions, advocating for their needs. And one of these things, it's exploring what's possible. In order to be aware of what's out there, you want to explore. And it can be challenging to figure out what expectations to even have for your child with a disability, especially when you want to have high expectations, but really don't understand what possibilities are available for them. So understanding what's possible is a great beginning step to creating a vision of your young person's future. and families need to know what's out there and the route to get there. Also, learning about possibilities. It's important to meet or talk with other parents of older children with your child's disability, checking out your area's independent living center, vocational rehabilitation center, disability organizations, PACER's National Parent Center on Transition to Employment, and other resources in your state, such as Connections California, which also has so many different resources on the biggest categories of adult life. So if your child even has maybe a social worker, they may be willing to meet up with you and provide examples as to how other young adults with similar disabilities or needs, are meeting their post-school goals in their community. So you will basically become an adult services detective. This is important, and something that you may start doing is maybe visiting a community college and meeting with the disability services staff about entrance requirements, the accommodations and supports they provide, and the range of abilities of their student body. Also attending transition resource fairs as a family, preparing questions and discussing what you learned afterwards. And a good way to be aware of what resource fairs are available in your area is maybe reaching out to your current parent training and information center, your PTI. If you're in the North County, in San Jose, Santa Clara, PHP may be that PTI to reach out to. If you're in the Southern California, San Diego, LA, Riverside County, task may be the one to reach out for. So you can find your local PTI to really research, the type of resources out there in the community. Also connecting with other parents and sharing what you've discovered. This is another great way to do so, by maybe joining support groups that also PTIs can help with, or specific disability organizations. Asking vocational rehabilitation services counselors, county social workers, and college disability services personnel to share, success stories of other youth with your child's disability. And as you plan and as you help define these goals and dreams with your child, then you will increase your chances of achieving them. So the good news about all of this, although it sounds like a lot, is that families don't have to do the planning alone. And the next slide is going to illustrate that. Who does the planning and why with Corinne?
Thank you, Luisa. So here we have a basic graph, and it talks about who is involved in this transition planning. So as you can see, the student is at the center, and then we have family, other organizations, the school team, and agencies that your child may need to work with as they transition to adulthood. So the student, although the student's attendance at a meeting is not required, the school must invite them. They're the center of the transition plan. And the students' dreams and goals will guide the decisions and what transition services are needed. If your child does not attend the meeting, the transition team still needs their input. And obviously, if they do participate, they take ownership in what they foresee in their future, and that can be very powerful. So then we have the family. What can families do to support their child's meaningful participation? Planning ahead, have a discussion with your child ahead of time about their hopes, their dreams, what they see their future involving. Use a checklist, perhaps, and talk about your child's strengths, their needs, their preferences, what their interests are. So that can all be something in the forefront before you attend the IEP meeting. And then help your child prepare for this meeting. Some students who want to participate and be very involved, some may not. Students can go as far as preparing a PowerPoint presentation about what they anticipate or what they see they would like to achieve in the future. And you as the family member can help them communicate that. So you as the family member also are invited to attend the transition meetings, and you are informed about what will take place at the transition meeting. Parents obviously know their child best, and they're equal members in the IEP meetings up until the child reaches the age of majority. And then once a student or your child turns 18, they assume the rights that their parents have had, and then they get to choose to invite you as the parent. And the school is no longer required to invite you unless you have become the legal guardian of your child, of your adult child. So what additional school staff might be involved? So when there are assessments or evaluations conducted, a person who can interpret those results, an expert in that field, is required to be at that meeting. And other school staff might include transition staff, guidance counselors, work coordinators, service and learning coordinators. And then on top of that, the others, with parents' permission and then the students' permission once they reach 18, the school should invite a representative of any participating agency that will be responsible for providing or paying for transition services. So this could include the county social worker, vocational rehabilitation counselor, post-secondary school staff, or medical or related service providers. And the parents or the student can invite anyone else on top of that, from any organization, anyone who has special knowledge about the child, family, friends, a mentor, an employer, a coach, anyone in the community that can lend insight and guidance into your child's future. So now let's take a look at the transition planning process in the IEP. So transition in the IEP, we start with the IEP team and identifying present levels of strength, needs, and interests. And those help develop the measurable post-secondary goals. And then we go on to transition services, goals, the courses of study, and any other activities that might come along to support your child in their transition to adulthood. So this map of the secondary transition planning process depicts what will happen in this IEP. It begins with the evaluation. It leads to the goals and the services and the courses of study that your child will take on their pathway to achieve their long-term goals and to reach adulthood. The evaluation forms the foundation of the IEP, and the IEP team, including the parent and the student, will collect that information needed to determine what the student's current skills, abilities are, their strengths, their interests, their preferences. Again, we're talking about all of those things that you did a checklist with your child ahead of time. Their academic and their functional needs. Do they need to learn how to gain transportation? Are they going to take the bus to a job? Are they going to drive? Going to the bank, managing money, all of those everyday life needs that they might need to develop. Long-term goals for learning, and how the student's disability may impact reaching those goals. So using all that information, the team will develop the program or the IEP to pave a path where your child is here now and where they want to be in the future, there. The IEP team uses age-appropriate transition assessments, comprehensive evaluation, your parent concerns, student input again, and any professional input, whether it be from the school or other agencies. State and district test results may also be included, and this can help to identify the student's present levels of performance and further develop the IEP. So the IEP must include long-term, measurable post-secondary goals in the areas of education, training, employment, and if appropriate, independent living. So even though the student may not know what they want to do in the future, it's important to begin to figure out some long-term goals and the supports that you may need, or your child may need, to develop those goals. So if you work backwards with that end result in mind, those goals, you and your child can then design what they need in the community to gain skills and experience, and what connections they might need to develop to achieve those outcomes. So once again, going back to the example of the veterinarian, or perhaps if your child loves gardening, perhaps going to the local garden center, or if they have aspirations of coaching or teaching, can you connect them with someone in the community and develop those long-term goals? So what transition services in the form of annual goals, course of study, activities, supports, services, and linkages are necessary each year to move toward achieving the desired outcomes after high school? That's what the IEP team will need to address. And what extracurricular activities and enrichment opportunities might support the goals? So what other things do they enjoy doing outside of school? Art, photography, soccer. What gives them drive and makes them happy, fulfills your child? And when determining these activities and goals to include in the IEP, families want to consider whether progress on the goal or with the activity will move the student closer to being ready to successfully pursue their higher expectations for learning, living, and working as an adult. So, for example, Susie might want to participate in an internship with this local veterinarian or with the garden center. And that will allow them to see if that's a good fit, if they enjoy being in that environment and working towards perhaps finding a profession someday in that same area. So you want to create linkages. So when other agencies or service providers are involved with the student after graduation, the IEP should also create the contacts and those links needed between those agencies to support your child. Parents or students can request that the school invite individuals to participate in the IEP meeting, or they may invite them directly. So now it's time to take a look at how families can map dreams in post-secondary education and training. So mapping dreams, transition to independent living, what do you consider? You explore options, talk with each other, continue to communicate, set destinations, set those goals that we talked about, map a course. How are you going to get to those goals? And then you may need to recalculate, as Louisa mentioned, but at least you have a plan. Students with disabilities who are preparing for post-secondary education or training have an exciting road ahead of them, but the pathway may not always be clear. And the pathway may change. If high school has been challenging, the prospect of more education may be daunting. So before launching into exploring options, we should probably take a few minutes to consider some important motivational factors that students and families should consider. And we will also explain important differences between high school and college that students and parents need to be aware of in order to advocate for their needs. And then finally, thinking about post-secondary education or training, why is it important? Well, the following are some reasons that students and their families should think about, and as to why post-secondary education or training after high school is important to their planning. It provides the preparation for employment, their future. You can build life skills and social skills along the way. And individuals who have attended college have a lower unemployment rate than those who have not. College graduates earn more money than those who did not attend college. And then most college students agree that going to college was worth it. On to you, Louisa.
Louisa, you're muted.
Of course, I'm sorry. So I was saying thank you, Karen, for that information. And now going forward, it's also important to learn about changes in rights and responsibilities that happen after high school, right? One of the most important things for parents to know is how these change. In the US, public K through 12 education is a right. And when students graduate from high school, these legal rights will change. For some students, graduation with a diploma can take place at the end of 12th grade, and for others, it can happen after receiving additional transition services when they reach the maximum age for special education, which here in California is at age 22. So the goal should be for the student to have a specific plan for post-secondary education or training in place when they receive this diploma. The law of IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, will no longer apply after your child receives their high school diploma, and an IEP is not transferable. So you cannot transfer this to a post-secondary education program, whether it's college, university, or any other training program. While IEPs may include modified expectations, curriculum, tests, students at the post-secondary level generally must otherwise qualified to access the same rigorous college program requirements as students with disabilities. And although equal access to post-secondary education is required by the ADA law, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and the Rehabilitation Act, these provision of accommodations or academic adjustments will not be initiated by the post-secondary program. So now your child or your young adult will need to disclose that they have a disability and request accommodations in order for them to receive them. Once accommodations are approved, it's going to be up to the student to take advantage of the supports given to them and the services available to them. And it's something that's helpful to remember is that IDEA is about progress and ADA and Section 504 is more about access. So knowing these changes and rights and responsibilities will help prepare you and your young adult, to develop self-advocacy skills, which leads us to our next slide that talks about what families can do now, and it's self-advocacy, which is the key to success. So starting to prepare now, you guys can support, you and the IEP team can support your child to develop the skills they need for self-advocacy so that they can be successful after high school. How can you do this? Well, practice disclosing to teachers, to coaches, friends, family members, paying attention to the sorts of accommodations that work for them now and making a list. Making sure that your students' final school special education evaluation is within 3 years from when they will be going to a disability services office so that this can be up to date. Ensuring that there's medical documentation updated, exploring post-secondary options and creating a timeline of checklists or tasks, which we'll be able to facilitate that maybe later on with Connections California, and providing that timeline that you need. But this is important. This really will make the transition process more smooth, knowing exactly where you're going to be going and what task you need to complete. Also, when touring colleges, setting up a meeting with the Disability Services Office. Families should plan to visit a local community college disability service office by junior year in time to learn about the use of assistive technology and even trying out possible accommodations while in high school. Karen will touch a little bit more on this later in the presentation, but this is important to know, making that list of colleges that your child wants to attend, visiting them and seeing what possible accommodations can help is going to be so useful, to allowing your child to be successful. Now, how does disability disclosure work in college? We mentioned that now once high school finishes, once your young adult enters college or a university, in order to access accommodation, they will need to disclose that they have a disability. And because it's so important, to really know about this, we want to spend some time discussing it more in detail. So once your child reaches the legal adult age, parents can only talk to or meet with the Disability Services Office with the student's written permission. And even then, colleges will always prefer to work directly with the student. College staff will not seek youth out to provide accommodations, even if the college is aware that they have a disability. So these accommodations, if they're needed, the student must disclose, their disability and provide the required documentation. The student can share as little or as much as they want, as they desire. And we shall remember that disclosure is a choice, including what information to share and when to disclose. And if your child needs to have accommodations right away, then they must disclose right away. And if they prefer to try to self-accommodate themselves and see how it goes, they can also disclose at any time, and request accommodations then. However, the college will not take retroactive adjustments. So research does suggest that seeking those accommodations early on will make a positive difference in the student's GPA and number of credits earned. And we actually have a whole document on the 411 of disability disclosure that we're going to be sharing, whether it's through here or we're going to be sharing through email. So it's a very good document to review. Now, how does it work at college? The interactive process. So post-secondary institutions can't discriminate against a student who is otherwise qualified to enroll just because they have a disability. They must provide access to the education or training programs that they offer, and accommodations that would alter the program or study or cause undue hardship to the college, such as requiring too much money or resources, then they wouldn't have to be provided. Therefore, your child will need to be ready to work collaboratively with the school and may need to compromise on the accommodations to be provided. Typically, the interactive process requires that the student communicate with or her professor and an access worker at the Disability Services Office to determine, the specific approved accommodations that will be provided. And your child will need to also have necessary documentation and a list of accommodations that have worked for them in the past. Parents can provide support. You guys can provide the support to your young adult, but in general, the school will want to work directly with the student. And it's best to see your role as the parent as being one of coaching and supporting from the sidelines. And the following are examples of accommodations provided by the post-secondary programs. I'm going to just mention a few. These can be testing, so extra time, reduced distractions. For note-taking support, it can be a note taker or note-taking technology. Textbooks and instructional materials. It can be books and other materials in alternative format. There can be assistive technology, housing accommodations like rooms, food services, private rooms, off-campus housing options. And students can change their mind or request different accommodations at any time. So if one doesn't work, they can always go back and request something else, alternatives. No one will be making sure the student takes advantage of the accommodations that were agreed upon. So your child, their self-advocacy is really important. And a transition tip: some students, especially those with hidden disabilities, may worry, about stigma associated with accessing the Disability Services Office, but there's often not as much stigma at college as there may be with special education services in high school. So many people go into the Disability Services office area, students who provide access services, as well as students who receive them. So that's something good to know. And these conversations are obviously going to come up and flow when you do talk to your child about this, and about the environment that will go on in a college. But now we're going to go on to assistive technology, and we're going to allow Karen to continue. Karen.
Thank you, Luisa. So before we play this video, Luisa did refer to assistive technology as an accommodation that your student may consider, and that can start in high school or in middle school. So it's a key to success in post-secondary education as well, along with employment and independent living. And it doesn't always require the support from a disability service to access. So it's really important that you and your child, your young adult, explore technology early so that they can get a feel for what works for them. So they can start in high school, in middle school, become comfortable and proficient with that assistive technology. And sometimes families need to take the lead. They need to initiate this exploration, access resources outside of the school, and also provide information to the IEP team. There may be something that works for your young adult that the IEP team is not familiar with. But that shouldn't stop you from introducing that. So at this point, we're going to play a video that can give you some more information about tips and when to consider using assistive technology in high school and college.
Let me know if you can hear it.
Transition Tech Talk. Pacer's National Parent Center on Transition and Employment with the Simon Technology Center presents College Bound with Assistive Technology.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Transition Tech Talk series. My name is John, and I'm an Assistive Technology Specialist here at Pacer. In this series, we're going to be answering some of your top questions about incorporating assistive technology into the transition process for your child. Today, we're going to answer a common question we get a lot from parents, and it's a really important one to think about. That being, how can assistive technology help encourage my child's independence in time for high school and eventually college? Luckily, as a parent, there's a lot of things that you can do right away to help encourage independence in your child. Here are the top 3 things you can do to start that process. One of the first steps you as a parent can take is to start exploring the ways that assistive technology can help with your child's independence. Say, for instance, that your child has a reading disability, and you oftentimes find yourself reading aloud different readings or assignments that your child needs to complete. Assistive technology can help your child do that independently. For instance, they could get an electronic copy of that same paper and load that into an app that could then read it back to them, much in the way that you assist them with reading. Now they're doing that same activity independently. That's the power of assistive technology. If you're curious on how assistive technology can help your child, I encourage you to talk with your IEP team members. IEP team members oftentimes have very helpful advice and can also connect you with school staff that have expertise in assistive technology. That can be a great first step to really putting some tools in your child's hands. The second thing to really consider is, how is your child's IEP or 504 plan going to encourage them to grow their independence? Your IEP and 504 is really about creating a careful balance for your child. 1, giving them support they need to thrive, while 2, also encouraging skill growth into key areas they need to be independent in high school and beyond. Working with your IEP team, let them know that the ultimate goal is to get your child college ready. That way, you can all be on the same page as you intelligently craft and plan the supports and accommodations your child needs to grow into their independence. The third point is to start this process sooner rather than later. Starting this journey soon is really going to help give you, your child, and also their support staff at school the time necessary to experiment and find what works for your child. It's also going to give your child plenty of time to become familiar with the different technology tools they're going to be using as part of their success. If you'd like to learn more on this topic, I suggest you read the following publications. The first is titled Getting Started: Help Your Child with a Learning Disability Be More Independent with Assistive Technology. The second one is titled How Technology Can Help Your Child with a Learning Disability Be More Independent. Both of these writings are available through the Center on Technology and Disability website.
So we are hosting next month, November 27th. It is a Monday webinar. And the topic is College Success, Technology, Tools, and Strategies for Students. You can sign up as you did for this webinar at php.com. So that might be of interest to you to learn more about AT and assistive technology and your student and what they might need going forward. So now we're going to talk about post-secondary education or training. What are the options? What to consider? We have several listed here. A lot of possibilities, full or part-time vocational programs, 2-year colleges, 4-year universities, certificate programs, and specific job training. So considering a certificate or a trade school program, these programs are typically completed in less than 1 or 2 years. And some examples of certificate programs include carpentry, culinary school, cosmetology, dental assistant, and a nursing assistant. We also have two-year technical school or community college. So these schools have a variety of admission requirements, and those with open admission typically they accept anyone with a high school diploma or a GED. And then next, we of course have four-year colleges or universities, and these schools tend to look at grade point averages, academic preparation, standardized scores, college admission tests. They also consider volunteer and community work, and often require personal essays. So inclusive post-secondary education programs also exist, and those are for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And there are some 2- and 4-year colleges that are making efforts to include students with disabilities who need modified expectations and additional supports by offering specialized daytime and residential program options. So Think College, it's www.thinkcollege.net, has information about these opportunities, and we can share that in the chat as well. It's a great resource. So the other post-secondary options could include adult basic education, training for workforce, apprenticeships, the Job Corps, military training, or day training and habilitation. So it's a lot to consider when discussing these options with your young adult. You'll want to think beyond a particular major. You might want to also consider the school's location, the size. Would it deter your child, your young adult, if it's too big? Even if the program might seem perfect, there's a lot to take into consideration. So also, will the school provide specific accommodations for your young adult? That's something to take into account. So as Louisa mentioned, not all programs provide accommodations, and colleges are not required to make modifications to alter academic requirements. So it's important that you talk with your young adult and think about all the things that you should be concerned about and consider when making a choice. You can also look at the student support services that are provided by this college or academic program. What are the housing options? School size, like I said, is important. What is the student instructor ratio? Would it be best to be in a smaller class setting? The location, is it close to you, or is it in an urban area? Is it in a rural area? How far away is it from your family? Will there be transportation needed? What type of transportation is provided? And of course, the cost and whether there's financial aid available. So we would encourage you and your student to visit these campuses, whatever they may be. Take it in, go attend or go to the campus when they're in session, not when it's empty in the summer, so they can really get a feel for what a campus is like, if they like it, if it feels energetic and they could thrive there, or if it's maybe not for them. That's a great way to take a first step in making those decisions. So we will be providing a handout, and as I mentioned earlier, it's really important to continue to talk with your young adult about their plans for post-secondary education and training. And this handout will be a checklist that you and your young adult can prepare. So one thing we could recommend is that you each make a copy and you do it on your own separately. You have your young adult prepare theirs, and then you prepare one yourself, and then make comparisons and talk about it. And that would encourage discussion. The more you talk about it, the more your dreams, their dreams, come to fruition. So within this checklist, they will consider what their abilities and their strengths are again, and how does my disability affect my learning and my ability to show what I know on tests, and what accommodations do I need to think about in order for me to be successful. And then obviously what post-secondary education or training programs do my teachers and maybe the school or counselors recommend in the areas that I'm interested in. So once you compare these checklists and discuss with your young adult, it will help things come into fruition. The plans, the dreams that they have will be more of a reality. And this is just a great exercise that you can use to get to that point.
Great, thank you, Karen. So this is another handout that we're also going to be sharing with you, and it's the setting a destination, setting a post-secondary education or training destination, and mapping a course to get there. So as Karen had mentioned before, setting a destination means, having these goals in mind. What goals are going to be in place, and that's something with that you're going to be able to put together along with the IEP team. See what they have gathered, as well as insight you've gained from discussions with your child, with your young student, and then choose a destination and begin mapping a course. And when you're planning for this journey, you will need to decide on specific destination or goal, and then map a course of action to reach it. The measurable post-secondary goal and the area of post-secondary education or training in your child's IEP should describe that destination. And now you and your child may wish to also consider the following when selecting a post-secondary education or training goal. Parents or other family members may provide input into financial considerations and support youth in completing any FAFSA or other, financial aid paperwork within the required timelines. Also, high school counselors and teachers are resources for connecting with colleges and training programs. Many schools offer college fairs, many districts do. So getting connected with those as well can be helpful. So you can also call post-secondary school admission officers to request brochures and fact sheets about the school and its programs and do a comparison. Schools almost always include information about their programs online. So that's another option. If possible, visit some potential schools or programs with your young adult, like Karen mentioned before, and see how, they would fit in. And if the atmosphere on the campus is it's a comfortable one, and consider all those questions that we went over on the previous slides. If this, even if it's the perfect program for them, is it the right fit and atmosphere for them? So those are things you also want to consider. And once there's a destination, you want to map a course. So be sure to clarify what the requirements are for admission for your child's preferred schools or programs while there's still time to meet the requirements. So this will be part of, making a list of things to get there, to get to that destination. Another thing that you can do is determine if your youth needs a certain grade point average, maybe particular prerequisites, coursework, or a college board test score to be accepted. Ask if they need recommendations from high school teachers or community members. And if so, you want to also consider who would be the best recommenders. Be sure to update the IEP at least annually or as often as it's needed to reflect any changes to measurable post-secondary education or training goals, annual goals, courses of study, or transition activities. And make it a goal to create linkage, as we also mentioned previously, to the new program before the student graduates with the high school diploma. So it's going to be very different for every student. The course, the how to get there, the route to get there will be varying, depending on the destination set. And as we also learned earlier, even if you make a plan and you have to recalculate, it's fine. It's okay. There's always going to be a trial and error, but being able to plan ahead will be, what's going to really create a successful future for your child. And something else that's very important as part of your parent role is staying informed and up to date. And that's why we really encourage you to stay connected to your statewide resources, to your California resources. We have here our Connections California page, so don't forget to visit it to get any information, resources, trainings around transition to adulthood, depending on those goals that you guys have set. you guys can go into the category of need and explore more information on that. So educate yourselves in order to confidently prepare for your children's adulthood and ease that stress that could lead to successful outcomes. We have also gathered for you 2 pages of state-specific resources, so feel free to check them out at your own time. We will be emailing all of this information to you within the next day or two, so look out for the email, and our recording will also be up into our e-learning library maybe within 3 or 4 weeks, so you'll be able to access that as well. So here's 2 lists of state-specific resources with more information. Go on, Corinne.
Thank you, Louisa. So we have thrown a lot of material, a lot of ideas your way, and it's a lot to take in, but it is worth the effort. And this quote kind of summarizes what we're trying to convey and really make a priority for planning for your young adult. Because you as a parent, even though all the teachers and therapists have finished their role with your student and now they're graduating or they're moving on, you will always be there to support your young adult and encourage them. So how do you prepare them for the future? You can help ask questions, help them develop their self-advocacy skills, help them learn how to develop their functional living skills at home and in the working environment. You know your young adult more than anyone, and by engaging with them and continuing to have discussions, it will be a very valuable tool in helping to formulate their future. So what we do for them today can have lifelong implications and benefits, and it's worth the effort.
Thank you so much, Corinne. And thank you all for being here and participating. We have shared with your contact information already on the chat, but here you go again. You know, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us.